Can you shift type 1 to type 2 muscle fibers to be a better athlete? Well, today we are going to discuss this topic. My name is John Evans. I coach the highest jumper in the world. This is Isaiah. He's the highest jumper in the world. And we are going to get into it. Before we do that, go to THPstrength.com if you're looking to jump higher and be a better athlete. So let me ask you this, Isaiah. What do you think? Let me reword this. Do you think it's possible to shift your type 1 to type 2 fibers?
I don't think it's fair to answer this because I was just looking at the studies.
What do you think, though?
Yeah.
You can, okay, and because I also have looked at the study numerous times. We basically had a couple people in the last podcast that we did on type 2 fibers talk about how that's been debunked and that it's actually possible to see a shift from type 1 to type 2X. And they've looked at it in tetraplegics was one that they referenced, and then there was a S&C coach that also referenced athletes seeing more type 2 fibers over time. So there's a couple limitations here. One is that you're looking at a population that basically it doesn't move, right? And there's no movement, there's no innervation. So basically if you cut innervation off to a muscle, it will shift towards type 2X. If you're a bird and you've casted its wing and it doesn't move for 16 weeks, you look 16 weeks later, that bird will have more type 2 fibers. Part of the reason for this is that when we look at muscle fiber compositions, what essentially you do is you take the muscle, you slice it in half, cross-sectional area, and you look at it under a microscope. Then what they do is they look at the coloration of it, and they base that coloration, or based on that coloration, they say whether a muscle is going to be type 2 or type 1, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Basically what they look for is the amount of, I think it's red blood cells is what they're actually looking at in there. It might be disgusting, but if you look at like birds, for example, like turkey that you eat, if you are talking about dark meat versus white meat is going to be the fast twitch fiber. Dark meat is going to be the slow twitch fiber. And typically you're going to see higher amounts of fat in the slow twitch fiber because it will be fueled for slow twitch type activity or endurance activity. You have anaerobic or aerobic pathways fueling that muscle. I'm not going to get too much into energy systems here, but that's part of the reason why it looks like a dark meat. And then if you're, lighter, if your fiber type or your fiber under a microscope is white, that is a fast twitch fiber. And so those fibers obviously have different contractile times. You'll hear people say like, oh, they're quick twitch or fast twitch. Now I think it's started to shift a little bit more for me in terms of like tendon properties being a big determinant, and more so your nervous system, because again, what you're seeing is you might have to cover the mic because of the wind. Just cover that. What you're seeing is the muscle fibers are changing because there's no innervation. So if you're not doing anything, literally nothing, I'm talking you sit on your ass for 16 weeks straight, then yes, you will have a shift towards type 2X fibers. That said, when you're looking at fiber type composition and you're saying, well, this is type 2A or type 2B or type 2X or type 2 or type 1A or B or type 1X. I mean, there's tons of hybrid fiber types because it doesn't fall perfectly into fast twitch and slow twitch. If you remove the nerve, right, the fiber will shift towards type 2X. Because the muscle's not being innervated, it will naturally shift. Our body's propensity is to shift towards type 2X, which is a fast twitch fiber. But as soon as that nerve is re-innervated, and you use that muscle regularly, you will automatically default back to your set genetic predisposed fiber type, and that's determined by the nerve fiber. So you technically couldn't do this because you're not going to remove innervation from your brain or to the muscle and then reattach it. That doesn't happen. We see something happen in research where they de-innervate it, or they remove the nerve fiber and then they can cross innervate it. So you have like alpha motor units, which are type 2 motor units. Those are the big, strong, thick motor units. You can think about it like a thick fire hose. They're really effective at sending action potentials down them and getting these muscle contractions to happen. And when you de-innervate that and you put something else in there, like a smaller nerve tissue, that's what determines the fiber type. It's not necessarily your muscle fiber has a set type, and that's what determines it. It's the use of it and the adaptation that happens that the body does over time from that set innervation. So if you have, the smaller innervation, it's not an alpha motor unit, and you don't have these big nerve fibers connecting to it, then it's going to be type 1. But if you have the alpha motor unit and these big nerve fibers, it's going to be type 2X. And so over time, by not using it, right, you're going to adapt to the imposed demand. And if you're not using a muscle fiber, right, then, or maybe a better way to say it is, as humans, we predominantly are using our slow twitch fibers, and that's according to the size principle. We recruit smaller, more efficient motor units more frequently. So if I go on a walk, if I pick something up, I don't need to recruit large motor units. I don't need to recruit type 2 fibers. But if I'm walking to my car and I'm opening the door, I need slower rates of force development, right? I need less force. And so as a result, those are going to default towards type 1 fibers. Now, as an athlete who's trains, what actually happens is your type 2X moves to type 2A. Type 2A is less explosive than type 2B. What you're really weighing here is type 2A or type 2B a better and more forceful contraction where you can generate more impulse on the ground, or your lever system is more effective than being casted for 16 weeks, right? Because if Isaiah were to, let's say I casted Isaiah's body, right, his whole body, and I was like, now we're going to have a type 2X shift, right? What's going to happen as soon as you're uncasted? What would happen to your body if I did that?
I'd get hurt trying to...
Oh, you can pull your mic back up now.
I'd get hurt trying to train and jump and all that stuff.
What would happen to the size of the muscle too?
It'd be weak.
Yeah, you'd have
small muscles.
way less force. Your rate of force development might be crazy, but your force output, your peak force would go to like 0. And so what you'll see some athletes do, or coaches do, is something called an overshoot, where basically they'll have insane amounts of training, right? And then they'll just cut all the volume and do nothing for like 2-3 weeks. This is kind of what happened with Jonathan Edwards. And then what they'll do is they'll go back to their competition and, they'll have these crazy performances. You could do that technically. And some coaches have tried to do it. I've tried to do it. However, what typically happens is they pull a muscle or they'll get hurt, right? That's super common because the muscle's detrained at that point. It hasn't done anything. The connective tissue is now incredibly stiff and the muscle's weak. So when the connective tissue, your tendon's stiffer than the muscle is going to pull or tear. The tendon will actually soften over time and its function drops as you don't use it. That's why doing nothing when you're an athlete is really, or you have jumper's knee or Achilles tendinopathy is really bad, because that weakens the tendon and your coordination is going to drop, right? You're not doing the activity you want to get better at. Let's say it is 16 weeks. I mean, even 2 weeks could be, kind of a detriment, but we don't even know what the timelines are, and we haven't really looked at long-term research in elite athletes to see, because most athletes aren't going to sign up to have, their body put in a full body cast or casted and then go out and compete. That's just not going to happen. We know that this happens in rats. We see it happen in birds. They've seen it happen in paraplegics or tetraplegics. They have more type 2 fiber than anyone else, right? But their muscles are incredibly atrophied. The peak force they can generate is way less, right? And so, yeah, maybe hypothetically it is really twitchy, but there's a lot of other implications that come along with that. So when I said on the podcast the other day, you can't change the amount or number, or you can't see a fiber type shift, that's because the fiber type is determined by your nervous system, and your nervous system is going to be determined by largely your genetics. You're not going to change the number of type 1 or type 2 fibers, the type of motor unit that you have. That's genetically predisposed. So you can train the muscle by taking advantage of something like the size principle or rate coding, where your nervous system is upregulated to a high degree and you're doing a lot of explosive movements, and you can train the muscle to act more like a type 2 fiber. You can train a type 1 fiber to act more like a type 2 fiber. But as soon as you detrain or you go the other direction, like let's say I stopped training completely and I was a normal human, not casted, I'm going to go back to my type 1 fiber activity if I'm sedentary. And actually Ben Moxness posted about this. Werner Gunther was a shot put thrower. They saw this happen with him. He had more cross-sectional area of type 2 fibers, but as soon as he reverted back to his everyday life, and he had a brother actually as well that they looked at, they found that, hey, he just has type 1 fiber again. Like he goes back to the same cross-sectional area of type 1 fiber. So you detrain back to like your baseline, right? Or I guess it would be homeostasis. The training over years and years and years is what allows you to be a better athlete. That's what allows you to improve your output. So can you have a fiber type shift? Yes. Can you have a fiber type shift and improve your athleticism over time? No. You would have more cross-sectional area of those bigger type 2 fibers, right? But you're not going to have your type 1 fibers turn into type 2 fibers because you're not a paraplegic, basically, right? Or a tetraplegic. You're using those muscles regularly. So that's kind of the maybe more of an explanation to what I said the other day. I know, again, not a lot of people, but some people were bringing up kind of counter arguments. So what is your lens on that? Do you have anything you'd like to share? Anything you'd like to say about that?
I mean, I think that at the end of the day, it comes down to, what makes you jump higher?
That's true. And doing nothing, does doing nothing make you jump higher?
No. Doing nothing does not make you jump higher, and it also makes you have a higher propensity to get hurt.
I mean, there was a period of time you didn't jump, or you didn't lift at all, right?
Yeah.
So you really didn't do anything other than jump. And what happened?
Yeah, I was jumping like 3 times a week on average for a whole year without training, and I jumped lower and got more injured. So.
Right. And I think this is also something
I probably had
interesting.
higher fast.
You might have had more fast twitch fibers.
Yeah, because I wasn't doing anything aside from. I mean, I was working. I was on my feet all day, so maybe I didn't. But I've had periods of time where, I've done nothing, and I don't jump as high as when I do stuff.
Yeah. I will say there was one interesting scenario where I had a high ankle sprain in high school, and I didn't do anything for like 3 or 4 weeks after training for like 6 months. Or I think I took a month off, and I jumped high as shit, like really, really high. That was like when I PR'd my high jump. But
Didn't it happen to Donovan Hawkins too?
Donovan has it happen too. Yeah, he takes off like a month or 2 months at a time. His vertical goes to shit during the year, and then he just trains like once every 7 days or something like that in the weight room. Or no, maybe it's 1 week out of every 4 or 5 weeks he trains, and then his vertical is sustained, basically. He can sustain the vertical in health. So it is possible to maybe take advantage of some of those mechanisms, but typically you have to be working with someone that knows from experience how their body responds, right? They know that if they don't jump for a period of time, don't lift for a period of time, that they will maybe have this overshoot mechanism happen. I don't think it happens for everyone.
I remember before Dunk League Season 2, Chris Staples said he had to dunk for like 2 weeks straight or something like that. Like leading
He went off, right? He went off during that.
Yeah, highest I've ever seen him jump.
So it's possible these genetic freaks, they have these fiber type shifts towards type 2A or whatever, and then if they don't do like their volume drops a little bit, they're not necessarily in a cast, or they're not lifting or anything, they start to see more of a shift towards their default, which is type 2X, right? But if you're not a genetic freak and you're more type 1 like me, like if I'm living my everyday life, I'm going to default to type 1, and I think at the time I'd been training for a lot. It's possible it was just I don't have as much fatigue, right? My body feels better. I had other issues pop up as a result from not training because my body was detrained at that point, right? Even if my rate of force development was higher, et cetera, there were other issues that arise, and maybe that's another point, right? Your transmission's not good. Your engine might be big, but you can't handle that power anymore. Your wheels can't put the power down. You can't steer. You can't whatever the issue is as an athlete from doing nothing. Maybe you're fat. Maybe you just get fat, and that's also another thing. Also, I heard you're a big proponent on athletes not being fat. Is that what did you tell the people the other day?
If you can't see your abs, you're leaving gains on the table.
I can't see. Well,
you're leaving vertical jump inches. On the table.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, that's pretty much. Do you have any other anecdotes? Anything else you wanted to mention?
Oh, I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, let's go train. I've had a day. He's had a day. He's dying. You want some caffeine?
Can't drink caffeine.
How about a trap slap?
No. I'll be fine.
All right. See you guys.